All right. Welcome, friends, fans, and fellow adventurers. You're rolling with advantages landed you here at D4&After. I'm your host, Ross Lee, and tonight I'm joined by two of our regular cast members, Katie, who plays Vee Veterock, and Logan, who plays Vaas, aka Bill Ronto. Fair warning, this episode will potentially contain spoilers for maybe the last year of play for both of these characters at least, and some major spoilers for episode 131, Dark Dawn of Divided Destinies. You have been warned. A couple housekeeping notes. These shows are pre-recorded. So if you have any questions, please submit them via the D4 Discord by Wednesday at 4 p.m. to the D4&After questions channel. We will do our best to get to every question that we can, but we most likely will not get to everything due to time constraints. Please feel free to ask. If your question isn't asked, feel free to ask in Discord and tag the person or you would like to have asked that question to, and maybe they'll be able to answer as time allows. This show airs every Friday at 9 p.m. Eastern, and the VOD will be available to Patreon members the following week. I think that's all for housekeeping notes. So without further ado, let's get into it. Katie and Logan, thank you for joining me this evening.
Thanks for having us.
So I've got a first question to kind of start us off is actually from one of our Discord members, Neoma Rose Lorekeeper. And I'm going to preface this question a little bit. Your characters, Vee and Vaas, have had, let's say, a rocky relationship since the beginning of the stream. That has ebbed and flowed over time throughout the campaign. Towards the end, has there been any sort of camaraderie between Vee and Vaas?
No.
Yeah.
No. I mean, you think so?
No.
No,
briefly, maybe, but
it ended real quickly. The only time Vee and Vaas get along is in the middle of a fight. Essentially, like I feel like Vee has used helped, was buffer the right word, damage for Vaas in the past to keep him from dying, but that's like the most that goes.
I don't think fights really count.
You don't think fights count?
Like in my mind,
just let you die.
No. What I mean by that is like looking for that sense of camaraderie. I don't think fights count.
Yeah,
like that's just it's people looking out for the interest of survival. Like I don't feel like that one time I sent my ancestors to help you. We should be friends now. Or that one time I like slit something's throat that was on you. No, I honestly don't feel like we've ever had a sense of camaraderie.
I feel like there's been moments here and there. Like I feel like in a weird way, the Catman moment was not a necessity, but maybe for a while, Vaas didn't view it as such. Like I think Vee did.
It's in a different mindset. We might talk about that tonight, but it's like even then, it was always fleeting.
Right, like it was like moments, and then it was pretty much over with.
On to the next, yeah.
Yeah, it's just there's just nothing about each other that works well with the other one.
No,
oil and water are almost on some level.
That's a way of looking at it.
Well, I do want to talk about the Catman, and that's actually one of the questions I had. So since we brought it up, let's just go ahead and get into that one, because that is one of the few moments where there was at least some cooperation between Vee and Vaas. So twofold question here. How did Vee come up with that? How did you come up with that in the moment, Katie? And why did Vaas, who is normally like very straight-laced, very blunt, to the point, why did he choose to play along with it in that moment? So twofold question there for both you all.
So I so knowing that I'm really bad at stealth, the moment I realized I was having to roll stealth, I was like, I gotta tell him something. And like based on how badly I roll will affect whatever it is I say to them. Because I wasn't just gonna flat out tell them exactly what we're doing.
Yeah. Totally.
And so I rolled low enough that like my stealth was bad, but not so low that it's like a 1, where I'm just like, here's everything. And I was trying to think really quick on my feet. I was just sort of like, okay, like What would we say to explain why there's like a man climbing a house like a cat? And I was like, oh, because he thinks he's a cat. For some reason, it was just the first thing that came to my mind. I was like, a person slinking around at night, cat-like, or rogues or cat-like. It just sort of all added up to cat.
Catman. And the Catman was born.
And the best description I had was the reason why I'm out here is to fetch him. Because I had to explain why I'm there.
Yeah,
and
totally.
why is a man scaling a building? Because he thinks he's a cat.
So, Vaas, you infiltrate the orphanage, do your things, come back.
Why did he get involved with it? Because Voss, for that very brief moment of his life, thought he had accomplished something positive. That was it. Like, the reason he had only brought V there was essentially after he had the conversation with Vinley about bringing the devil out. Voss believed the best course of action to find out if this woman was evil or not is like Voss went out of his way to actually give her the benefit of the doubt. Which is, I don't want to bring the whole group in, smash her with Zone of Truth, and pin her up against a wall. I'm going to go there and I'm going to ask her. And the reason he brought V is because she'd interfere the least. Like, she's also the only one who in Voss's mind is not tainted. Which is why, if you watch the last episode, when he's talking about how terrifying everyone is, he doesn't include V in that argument.
I did notice that.
Yeah.
I almost asked Via, almost brought up, am I scary too? But then chose not to.
I didn't notice that. That's interesting.
No, that's why he didn't include V in that, because you're not possessed by anything. You don't have a god to answer to. That's why you weren't included in that. And that was why he took V along and why he didn't want anyone else to come. That was kind of a big turning point for him. But it was just like he was happy for that brief moment when he thought, okay, this woman is not evil. And I can get on with my life, and maybe the best way to go about things is to put out a bit of trust for people. Yeah. That's not what happened though. So
unfortunately.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's a lot that transpired after that in Daggerford. And Logan, for Voss specifically. What was it like going that step of like, all right, I'm going to try to do something positive. I'm going to try to put a little bit of trust in someone, and then just rug yanked it out from under you. Like,
he'd been proven right that his instincts were dead on, that the world is out to murder him and he's got to murder it first. Like that's essentially that's essentially what happened after the end of that. Is like him going just with V was his way of saying, I'm going to give whatever everyone else in the group does a try. And approach the situation with trust as opposed to like pessimism. And he did that, and it bit him in the ass. And he was like, okay, I understand how all of this works now. And I'm going to stop denying the pieces of myself that keep me alive. And I'm not going to feel bad about it. And that's essentially like Red Coat, Red Hair has story elements that we'll probably never hear about, but it's him accepting the pieces of himself that everybody else finds as vile, and he says, no, this is who I am. Like that's what that resulted in, finding out that he indeed, well, not only was he tricked, they should have come in and just slaughtered her. That would have been the smart move, because then she wouldn't have showed up at the mansion, and then they might not have needed to summon the devil. But his trust essentially created the situation, and he never forgot it.
Interesting. You mentioned in the last episode that Daggerford was a turning point for Voss. Was that moment? Was that situation?
There was a lot. God, there was a lot going on in Daggerford, and
there was a lot going on.
Yeah,
in Daggerford.
Beyond what I've already mentioned, the main thing that happened was Vinley summoned a devil willingly. And then not only did they, at first, I mean, Voss is in a panic move. And he essentially said, we can still break the contract. Like, Voss is terrified of dealing with devils. They're evil incarnate.
So.
Yeah, they're evil incarnate. They deal in ways that you don't expect. They're far more powerful than anything he's ever dealt with. Skullport, which used to be Vaas's home, is possessed by strange entities that have supreme magic over the area. That's his experience with magic growing up, is just random evil that almost on a whim decides to destroy you. So seeing it manifest is terrifying to him. But then, like, he thought, okay, we can make a deal with this thing if we get Pishka, and then we can resolve this and we can just forget that this happened. And I'm willing to go that length. But two things happened. One, he found out that one, his instincts were dead on about the orphanage person. And two, they summoned the devil there. Like Seisha summoned the devil of all people. And then the usage of his real name, and then everybody had to make a deal with him. And that was the one thing Vaas doesn't do. And he had to compromise. It was the last time he was going to compromise what he was. Like, looking back on that moment, what I wanted to do was fuck off and not agree to it and go down fighting. That was what I wanted to do, because to me, in reality, that would have been preferable. And I've made a lot of decisions that have actually gone contrary to my first instinct, specifically for group cohesion.
And was that one? And it sounds like that was one of those moments for Vaas where
that was one of those moments where there's no coming back.
Yeah,
there's no coming back from this point. Everything needs to be $200. Everything needs to. It's like, I know I'm right. I know my instincts are right, and I'm not going to doubt them anymore.
So that leads me. No, good.
Yeah, sorry, I didn't know if they were making a lot of noise.
Bring them in. They got an opinion.
Our furry visitor friends are always more than welcome.
They were like, we're part of this, and started messing with the bag and knocking stuff over, and I was so worried. It was like loud, and like during Logan's beautiful explanation of Daggerford.
I'm always prepared for cat nonsense. That's just a fact of life, and we all should be prepared for it.
Especially after this virtual world.
Yeah, I feel like I've never been more I've never respected rats more than role playing with you, and the way that you always manage to bring rats into it. It's so impressive.
Rats are fascinating, and they're amazing creatures. Like,
they are.
They're the only. I think they're the only mammal on Earth that outnumbers us.
I should have called you the Rat Man, not the Cat Man.
Well, Cat Man, you can get a lot farther in a town of Daggerford naming a Cat Man. Rat Man is like, oh, he's a plague bearer. He's a spreader.
Yeah.
That's kind of like that's the specious profiling we're dealing with from the local Daggerford cops, is they can't handle a rat man.
A lot of negative connotations for Daggerford folks with rats.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Yeah. Oh man. So there was a lot going on in Daggerford through Daggerford. And one of the things that a conclusion that Vaas had come to, that Vee affected Vee directly, was Elithak. And his decision about what to do with Elithak. When you told Vee what was running through your mind, and then Vee, when he told you, obviously you guys the characters don't have the best relationship, so how did Vee take that, knowing what was coming now?
So I did know it was coming, because even if Vee and Vaas never had that conversation, like, it's pretty clear how Vaas operates, and like killing Elithak, I just always sort of felt like was Vaas's goal with this. Like, kill Manchun, kill Elithak, kill the whole deal, whatever, because they're all compromised. They're all just totally nutso evil, like, and in too deep in whatever they're in to be able to come back from it, essentially. And as a player, like, it was very recognizable. But I didn't really know if Logan was actually going to roleplay that way. I just sort of suspected it until like right before that episode. We had a conversation just to make sure that like it was okay.
Well, it was me. This wasn't my journey, so to speak. And
yeah, you wanted to make sure you weren't stepping on my journey, essentially, which like is totally fine. And I still think it's funny that Ethan told me he was messaging you while it was happening, being like, "You told her about this, right? Like, you guys planned this."
But, okay.
Huh?
But never mind.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, it was a matter of like, it was going to be an intense conversation no matter what. And if it was a matter of, no, there's stuff I want to do and that's going to interfere too much, I was like, cool. My thought on that is I always err towards the interesting. And to me, and partly is like, I thought wrongly, obviously, that we'd fight Ellerthak at the top of the mountain. Like, I figured that was almost inevitable that he was going to show up and try to stop us. So my thought was, it adds a degree of interest to us if it's not just about fighting Ellerthak, but also figuring out what to do with him afterwards.
Yeah.
And letting that be a contentious party line. Go ahead.
No, at the time when you confronted Vee with this, Vee really like was honestly had been trying not to think about it because, and part of why, because for the longest time, Vee felt like she would have been okay if they had just killed him. What actually sort of changed her mind a little bit was seeing the fact that Harold's parents weren't actually awful people, which like kind of hurt her feelings in a weird backwards way. Like, she kind of wanted them to be terrible people so that she wouldn't also feel alone and having terrible parents and everyone being team, we hate our families, let's just kill them all, fuck them, kind of a thing. And it added this level of humanity to like, oh, those are your parents. And that event happening so closely to this just had her like spiraling a little bit mentally. I know it didn't super show in role play. I mean, I like to think I showed that like Vee was upset at the fact that like Harold's parents were nice people, but I also didn't want to seem like a total asshole.
There was a lot going on that too.
Or play her as like some selfish brat that's all about her or whatever. You know what I mean? Like, oh, fuck you for having nice parents. Like, kind of a
common
fine line.
Yeah, so it kind of gave her this weird hope that like maybe her family isn't lost. Like maybe there is something else happening and they just got caught up in something the way the Castellaners got caught up in something, the way Harold's family did and whatever. And like maybe somehow there's some way to get out of this. And like, you know, and also with how Vee's brother had always kind of been a dick to her and stuff like that. And they fought and things like that. Like, she had never considered the fact that maybe like what's going to happen to him if they just kill their dad, like what's going to happen to her mom. And I think that was all things she hadn't truly considered until meeting Harold's parents and being like, well, fuck. And so she went from kind of feeling decisive about, I hate my family and I want nothing to do with them, they want nothing to do with me, so fine if they're dead, to like being kind of sad about it. And that's why Vee couldn't answer that question in that moment. And she was, and like me as a player was panicking and being like, don't let him persuade you because you're so persuasive.
It's to Vaas, past Daggerford. He had, like I said, there are a lot of times where I went contrary to what I wanted to do for the sake of the party. It may not seem like it. There was a lot. And
I believe it.
And there was a time like, to partly like, it would have been easier for Vaas if you didn't know that Vaas was planning this at all. But it's more interesting on a stream if we let that conflict boil over. Like essentially post Daggerford, like, trying to think about it, like I mean, we can probably go ahead and say this. Like, one of the things that happened over there, particularly at the hut, like, and it's there. The clues are there if you see it. The guy who contacted Harold's parents was Voss. Like, that was Voss in a disguise.
Oh.
Yeah.
Huh.
The guy that, like, in cloaks, shadows, that was Voss.
But you had them.
I own an item called the Cloak of Many, or the Clothes of Many Fashions.
Well, so do I.
Mine are clothes, not a cloak.
Oh, yours the
You only got the
clothes of
cloak. We
I only
make a
got the
complete
cloak.
set.
Yeah, it's true. If only.
Yeah.
Wow.
That's done. It's done now. Won't ever happen.
That's wow.
It's
That's a
there.
huge
It's
thing.
there. The clues are there if you look at it. It's actually like,
Yeah.
You see it.
Yeah.
That's so crazy. Oh my god.
There's
He
a
doesn't have
reason.
anything that deep.
Yeah. There's a reason he did that. And it was basically, we will not know if your parents are evil until they are tempted by another side.
Mm.
And to give them the opportunity to be reintroduced to the life they were in. The conversation between him and Dabble that was so vague, that was him trying to convince Dabble that this needed to happen.
I see. To see whether or not they're actually good people or
Yeah,
not.
because Dabble didn't want to do
Okay.
it. Rightfully so, because even for Dabble, it's super sketchy.
Yeah.
Yep.
And it was Voss saying, you need to do this because, like, we're never going to know what they are or what they're about until they're put in a situation where, move forward.
It's almost like Voss was, in some roundabout way, I feel like, and you tell me, Logan, it's almost trying to do Harold a favor by proving that with his parents.
A lot of what Voss does is trying to do the party what he feels is a favor. Like,
yeah,
a lot of what
Totally
he does.
see that.
I'm not saying he's right or wrong, but I am saying from his perspective, like, this is the favor that I'm giving you.
it's a lot of weird, tough love.
Yeah.
Yeah, in a way.
I definitely always got that vibe from Voss. I always felt every action you made as Voss was like Voss being like, I truly do believe this is the best choice for the group, whether or not the group agrees with me.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And that's something I've always noticed and picked up about Voss. It's not necessarily for like always your individual, but you're like, no, I think this is what would be best for everybody here, whether they want it or not.
Well, the interesting thing about Go ahead. I say the interesting thing about us as characters is we're both unabashedly ourselves. The difference being
100%.
You can be yourself openly and I can't. And that is something Voss resents.
That makes sense, because me being like openly myself is kind of silly. Mm-hmm. Whereas like for Voss, it's like, whoa, murder puppet, what's going on here?
Yeah, and outgoing. And Voss, more introverted, more planning. Like, the best way I can see this is like the best example of this is, I don't know if you remember the episode where the whole of the group was planning a birthday party for Vee, like the big surprise party.
Oh yeah.
And then Voss during that time has to give up one of his greatest weapons to save a girl he enslaved. And that's just such a like dichotomy right there.
Yeah.
Between the two of them. It's like, this is like the party's engaging in this, and the party really can't engage in this. So in some way, shape, or form, he's always alone.
Yeah.
I can see that.
Yeah, Voss does go out on his own a lot.
He does. But even that moment of, giving up that weapon, or like you were talking about, doing that moment with Harold's parents, or anything like that. Like, Voss has his own way of being selfless. And I feel like that's been, like you said, it's those moments are there throughout the campaign. It's different, but they're there. And I think even just this last episode, you were like, hey, we should use our favor with the Open Lord. to get all of these people back. And that was just a very like, hey, we could use this favor for anything. This is what's right. Does Vaas see that as sacrifice or being selfless or just doing the right thing?
To Vaas, proper sacrifice has to not necessarily feel good. Like, it's a weird thing to say, but this is like, there are shades of my personal philosophy in the character, as I think there are anything else. Doing the right thing doesn't feel good necessarily. In fact, it can feel really shitty. In fact, most of the time it does feel really shitty, because a lot of the times doing the right thing means you have to move well and out of what you are comfortable with. And for Vaas, like, he was going to get the kid one way or another. It just didn't matter whatever it was going to cost. And it cost him, like I said, probably the best weapon he's had. But it was well worth it to essentially save a girl that's going to hate him forever. And that was part of it. Like, I like dark fantasy, and when I say dark fantasy, I mean like Berserk, for those of you who are familiar with it.
Hey, that's me. I'm familiar.
You are familiar with the Berserk, then you know what I'm talking about. Then.
I do. That's pretty dark, bro.
It is dark, but it's a matter of, I always like the trope of a dude way out of his league struggling against the way the tide is turning on. And he's not a dude who will ever be able to overpower most things. He is the weakest member of the group. Like, anyone in the group can take him. And that's by design. I gave myself a 10 con on purpose, because constraints breed creativity.
Yeah.
And he's a melee upfront fighter with a con of 10. He is not statted well, but it breeds more interest, and it means he has to do more creative things in order to function.
And creativity helped.
Yeah, I'll shut up. I feel like I'm dominating the conversation.
No, I was just gonna say, I feel like creativity helps generate a good show for our audience. So that's awesome that you even went to that lengths with your character. So much so even at the start.
Yeah,
I know that.
Oh, sorry.
Go ahead. I have a question for you.
Okay, well, I was just gonna go off of what Logan said when he made his con low on purpose. It's just sort of, I made so I did my best to make like my intelligence and wisdom as low as possible. I had never played a character that's supposed to be stupid, essentially. And I wanted to be able to try to see what that would be like dialogue wise. Like, I've never really played a character that sounds quite the way Vee does. And like, I thought it would make for really fun, weird, goofy conversation, laughing at the wrong time, saying things at weird times and stuff like that. I feel like sometimes I think ahead of time to be like, oh yeah, you're supposed to be awkward, like say something.
Yeah.
Like, just say whatever comes to your head, I guess.
I feel like both directions take an equal amount of work. The work's just different on how you approach your characters that way.
I definitely let loose a lot more as Vee and improv a lot more. I feel like a lot of my like characters I've played previously in D&D, I've always thought out really intensely, like what I'm going to say, what I'm going to do. But I've also always played like intelligent, self-serving, kind of sometimes borderline evil characters that just sort of like not quite Vaas like level calculated, but but more of that vein.
It's also not within your it's not within your purview necessarily to act like that. Like, you're playing a character that is by her nature impulsive.
Yeah.
So if all of a sudden Vee's laying down, it's okay, I got a 55-step plan here. It's going to go like clockwork, like a game of mousetrap. But I'd be like, oh shit, okay. I don't know where this is coming from, but I'm on board for it. Okay.
Yeah, that's why Vee's ideas of a plan is stuff like, well, we'll just have a dance party and then like see sort of what happens, and then we'll give this person I don't know, like just try to come up with stuff that could be a plan but also are a little ridiculous.
We'll go break into my house and steal a necklace that I need to go up and
I wasn't even planning on taking that necklace. It was there and I was like, this looks nice.
Yeah. Oh, that's even funnier. Oh, I'd forgotten about that.
Yeah. I was like, that I would piss him off. I'm gonna piss my dad off. Because up until things got really real, that was Vee's real thing, was that she just wanted to piss off her dad, like that rebellious teen kind of a thing, until it became way too real for her to like handle.
Yeah. So with Vee, obviously her dad's been a huge influence in her life, not necessarily positive. And you expressed earlier even that desire to, your brother is like, what about your brother? What about your mom? And seeing that dichotomy with Harold's family and then going up on the Star Mount and learning more about your family, what was that process like on especially learning more about the Venorox and just more about that side of Vee's family versus the family that she had known in Waterdeep?
Gosh,
what was that like for her?
At first, she didn't feel the connection. She immediately wanted to feel like your kinship kind of a thing. But just like every relationship, you have to get to know each other before you can really feel that intense connection. And that was something Vee always really struggled with her own family, was feeling like a strong bond, a strong connection, except with her grandmother, Lo. Like they took the time to know each other and talk to each other and have that bond. If there's anything she really learned from her family growing up, besides, besides just being a strong physical person, I guess, she was kind of forced in a way to not care what people think about her, because the people closest, who are supposed to be the closest to her in her life, like criticize her constantly. And she sort of kind of had, and if she could either go one of two ways, super not care and go off and do her own thing, or be like Ellerthak and do Uthal, or be like Uthal and try to do everything she can to please them and hope that she'll one day get praise. But Vee feels like she learned really early on, she's not getting that praise. And if she is, it's far and few between, and it doesn't come naturally to her, and she's too impulsive. So she just sort of became more of the mindset of like, no, I'm going to do my own thing. And like, y'all are lame and I'm cool. And grandma's cool. And so when she learned that there was like a whole tribe of people on the mountain who are theoretically exactly like her grandmother, she was like, that sounds great, but also weird, because I don't know any of them. Will they even like me? And then, of course, she like started getting in her head being like, what if they don't like me because I'm like this city person? Like I grew up in the city. I grew up so far removed from all of this.
A natural fear.
Like I'm strong and everything, but will we like have anything to talk about and like get along? Like, will it be weird? And she
just be moments
really,
of those.
Yeah. And her biggest fear was getting there and everyone feeling like strangers to her, and her just being like, I don't want to be here. Like she was worried. Like obviously she wanted to go and help and see what happened to the Venorox. Never did she actually think they were alive. Like she really thought that she was just trying to learn what happened to them in the history, and just knew she had to do that. Something was compelling her. She was going to have questions her whole life unless she did this. And it was like a once opportunity thing. And then, but then she kept thinking, oh my God, what if we do find them? People keep bringing them up like they're still around. Like, what do I do? Like, what if they need me to stay with them? Like, am I okay to leave the group? Like, would the group be okay without me? Like, would I feel like I'm forced into another position that I didn't ask to be forced into? Because that was a huge problem with her and her dad growing up, is like she was being forced into a role, and she was worried she was about to be forced into another role without even needing to. So it's a lot of anxiety.
Yeah. A lot of anxiety, a lot of nervousness.
Yeah. But as they got closer to it, she knew this was where she needed to be, and this is the right thing to do. And that like, no, this is important. This is her family.
Do you feel like a leader now?
A bit more, yeah, actually. I know that like she's not the most eloquent when she speaks, but she's getting more used to like answering for people and like taking a little bit more of a charge and doing it in her own way. It's starting off pretty small, but
understandably so.
right, but she's, preparing for the thought that one day she's going to have to make really big choices that affect this entire group of people. And while it's a lot of pressure, she does have faith in herself that like she will be able to make just decisions.
Has her now being the con of the Veterox sunk in yet? Because I think of the example of like the elders saying like, oh, you asking the elders to talk to Station, they're like, yes, my con. And I feel like Vee's reaction was just like, oh, this is a thing now.
Yeah. She's definitely not used to it yet. I don't know if it's fully sinking in. Like she literally just met these people.
You got authority.
And she's just like, oh my God. But it's I think part of why it also hasn't fully sunk in is because she knows that she's about to leave with the group again and go do another quest and come back and report back or whatever. And I feel like until she is forced to have to make really important big group decisions, I think then is when it would really be like, okay, I have to like really be a leader here. But I don't know if I can say this because she hasn't said it in roleplay, but she does actually have an solid idea for what to do with Elerthak.
Ooh,
it's not wishy-washy. It's not wishy-washy anymore. So yeah.
Well, that'll be exciting to see how that plays out over the next little bit, I'm sure.
Yeah. She's starting tunnel vision on it a little bit more now, but due to her fear of Vaas getting there first.
He's there.
I know.
It's a solid fear to have at the moment.
Yeah, it's just sort of like, oh God.
Vaas, watching especially this last part of Vee's journey, watching her step up and become a leader in the Veterox, did that at all change his perception of her? And I have a follow-up around Elerthak, and just does the up to now anyway apparent hesitation around that affect that at all?
Voss's initial view of Vee was someone that didn't understand just how good they really had it. Which from Voss's perspective, you're 7'4", you're athletically gifted, you're beautiful, you come from a powerful family, and you do nothing with these gifts. And that was his initial thought of her.
I get that all the time in real life.
but it was like that. Well, that was his initial thought. Because he's like, oh great, noble girl, built strong as an ox, has all of these things, like, and just felt incredibly irresponsible. As time passed and she started to come into these things, all Vaas could think about is like, are you going to do anything with this? It's his main point of contention with a lot of the party, which is, are we going to do anything with this? Are we going to move this forward? We now have, like, if Vaas were more open about planning or felt more comfortable with the group, his question to you is be like, you have access to an army that could be very useful in taking down our enemies. And it's like, I'm not expecting them to leave the mountain right away, but it's like, you got to start thinking about when that's going to be useful. However, Vaas had reached the conclusion that he was going to leave well before this, actually.
Mm.
So that never really entered into his mind. It was a resource that was going to be gone to him. As for Ellerthak, Vaas didn't necessarily even want him dead at first. He just thought he was Manchun's puppet or something we'd have to deal with at some point. It wasn't until he realized who he was, which was, as he's hearing about Ellerthak, this is a guy who was exiled, beaten, brought low, and brought himself back up to great heights. A guy like that's dangerous. You can't ever put a guy like that down permanently. So the idea of him rotting in a cell in Waterdeep was laughable. It's like he has to die because he'll find a way back and he will be a threat to you, your tribe, and us, which is why when everybody kept saying it was Vee's decision, it's like it affects all of us, including everyone in Waterdeep. It's not her decision. But at that point, the die was cast and it was just like, my words will fall deaf ears at this point. He already knew he was going to leave. I mean, I will say this. He's happy that she ascended to a position of leadership and that when the call came to accept that, she took it as opposed to shying away from it because he feels people should face forward and move into the fire rather than shy away from it.
I feel like Vaas always wants to see people become the best versions of themselves. Whether or what he thinks maybe is the best version of themselves.
Yes, that's accurate.
I wonder if characters would necessarily agree with what you picture, with what Vaas pictures as the best version of themselves, but I think that pushing is a thing that has come naturally throughout the campaign for.
Oh, this is a storytelling thing. You only understand what a character's worth is found through conflict. Part of the reason why Logan was motivated to have that conversation with Katie about, killing Ellerthak at Fall is it presents a very tangible conflict, and now she has to make a decision. Like there's no moving back from it anymore. It's not just about, confronting your father. It's about, I'll do it and I'll take that away from you and I don't care. Now the conflict has been made forward. Like the same way with, like, I'll go ahead and give you examples. Like to Vaas, Harold, who is the most frustrating party member from to deal with in reality, yes, despite our contentious issues, Harold was always the most frustrating. Because to Vaas, you were good at one thing. You're a blunt instrument. And you're very good at it. But Harold is a weaver. He can change the way things move. He could come in and start pulling the underground in directions that he liked to do. And we could have shared the burden together. But every time he asked him to do it, he said no. And that was grating after a while. It's like, okay, maybe I can't trust you to do this. With Seisha, it was all about whatever the fuck is inside of you, it needs to be confronted and ended. Because that's the thing that's holding you back. Like it feels like you're a goddess at times. And that can go either way. And you could be one of great compassion or one of rueful vengeance. I've seen either way. Vaas did not forget that the moment Seisha turned, she took out Harold with a shot. Like down to the ground, 54 hit points in one shot. Like his con's not super high, but it's a 12. That's not bad. Like he's not weak by any stretch of the imagination, just like that. And with Vinley, he never minded anything she did until the devil. Like his best version of her was always going to be, you finding ways in which your particular brand of magic fits the group as well as fits yourself and allowing yourself to be independent. The second she summoned the devil, it was, you're dead to me.
I always view Vinley in a way as the most dangerous.
She is. Like during the last conversation, Vaas told her straight up, you summoned a devil once and I believe you'll do it again.
I believe she's just really power hungry.
Vaas did not believe that up until the point where she summoned the devil, and then from that point forward, she was the biggest liability in the group, even with Satan. And that was part of like what was causing such stress. Part of the reason, like, despite the fact that like in that last conversation, he was like telling his true feelings on the party, he never really disparaged you. And it was mainly because, one, everything that's been said about us has been said. And two, at the end of the day, and this isn't meant to be an insult, you're not a threat. Like, you are, clearly, but you're not a threat to the world. Like, Harold, Seisha, and Vinley could be threats to the world and the city at large. Harold's attached to something he doesn't even know what the hell it is or what it wants. And Fae are weird. Their motivations are alien.
Mhm.
There's no telling when that chicken's going to come home to roost. And with, I mean, Vinley and Seisha are obvious. So
That's interesting that Voss doesn't view V as a threat, especially given the recent changes now that she's got a interdimensional planar traveling army of Goliaths.
it's not in her nature to be a conqueror.
It's and
that's
like,
part of it, like, because
sorry.
she's so opposed to her father. I see it anyway.
On top of that, the Veterok in general, they're not trying to conquer the planes. They're trying to keep them from opening. They're trying to keep like everyone in their dimension and just sort of be like, no, stay out of this one. Like the protectors of a sort, like guardians. They have never been like conquerors, essentially. Like, even though they have access to all of these planes of existence and dimensions, they didn't ever try to be able to take them for themselves because they're the ones who travel them.
You're also not tied to a god.
That too.
Which is another thing. You're tied to like land. And it's not land that talks to you. It's not like, hey, buddy.
It's just like trees. It's like a mountain and like the ancestry of that mountain.
Yeah, it's metaphysical shit as opposed to like, hey, I've got a voice and ambitions and you're in my thrall. And hey, why don't you just, kill that king? Just do it because I'm telling you to.
Yeah.
Like, that is a thing that can happen.
Well, maybe a question for V is, Katie, do you ever see her getting tempted by that power to be like, oh, maybe I could go?
If she did, it would be out of spite.
those first steps. Maybe I could go take out my dad and, then go down that dark path. Or is that something that you just don't think V has in her, or remains to be seen? Maybe.
Okay, in a way, V does have that in her. So, like, if V were to ever do something like that, it would be honestly probably out of pure spite, just to prove that she can. Because so much of what drove her for so long was proving to her dad that she can do what she wants, she can live on her own, and she can be successful. It wasn't really, when she initially left home, it was never her plan to come back around and conquer her dad and his empire or whatever. She just wanted to go off and do her own thing and make her own success, have her own adventures, and have none of it be related to any bullshit her dad was doing. But after a while, with the hardships she grew up with her dad and the idea of wanting to prove herself still, there's this level of spite of like, well, I can do this too. Like what, like there's always been like that temptation thought of like, I could, go with I guess Vaas and kill him and try to take over everything or whatever. But there was always some like gut feeling that made her feel like that was wrong. And it was also, I think she also still on some level like struggles with doubt. Like so much doubt was naturally ingrained in her growing up, especially when you're so young, because she's 20. Like it's kind of hard to be out of you. You have to have world experience to be like, no, I can do this. And she's getting there. That's been my other struggle, is playing a realistic 20-year-old. You know, like she's gotta like not make the best decisions and like have the what like she really believes there can be an ending where everyone can be happy or something. Like it's just not possible, but she wants to have that. She's not like as naive and wide-eyed and bushy-tailed as like Stacia is, but she still has some of that like she's still naive in a lot of other ways though. Like there's a lot of things she hasn't experienced, and overthrowing her dad's empire is one of them.
You're off to a pretty decent start there. You know?
But I don't know if you remember, I think this was around when we summoned the devil. But everyone had like dreams, nightmares or whatever of like some alternate reality in which they got like their darkest desire. And Vee's was like not only like being the leader of her dad's crazy psycho empire, but having him be enslaved in it was part of that dream she had. Because that would be like her deepest level of spite towards him. But all emotions are fickle. They're not black and white, you know?
Yeah.
You can want something one day and then feel differently about it the next.
Yeah.
And 20-year-old girls are like that. They don't know what they want. How are they supposed to tell you what they want?
Yeah, that's fair. One of the things that happened in the last episode, or 2 episodes ago, was and I'm gonna I don't speak English well, I feel like some days, but the epithet that V got given, and this question comes from our friends on Discord, Mama Strange. Were you ever worried about what her friends might select for her epithet?
Yes.
And did V have any input?
Oh my God. Okay. So I was like, I don't want it to be something stupid and lame or anything that could be misconstrued into some sort of dirty, long-running joke. Just because I knew I was going to be called that for like however long. And so after I am not good at naming things. Sometimes I need time to think about it and be inspired. In the moment, I remember right after V killed the weird ass dragon, Rhea messaged me and was like, I have an idea for your epithet. What about like Unbreakable? And I was like, that sounds pretty cool. It's short, sweet, you know. Vee the Unbreakable, like, sounds pretty cool. I felt like it could be like, you know, unbreakable in the sense that like I almost died but came back because like I did get to like 0 hit points, but also like, you know, my spirit won't break. Like I thought it could be like used in different ways. So I really just, and then Goblin Katie messaged me being like, do you want help with an epithet name? Like I can help you out. And I was like, yeah, just like pitch me ideas, which I didn't realize that like she didn't pitch me ideas. I think she was just thinking of them and decided to say them during role play, which I didn't realize is how she was going to do that. So I just thought she messaged me with help, and then like I never heard back. So I was like, okay, maybe she couldn't think of anything. So when she changed it to like Unbreakable Heart, I was like, oh my God. I was like, I did not expect this. I just expected Unbreakable. That was what I had talked to Rhea about, and like I anticipated that one. And I know V a lot of the times has felt a little misplaced in the group, especially before they went on her journey when they were just back in Waterdeep. There's a lot of moments where she was like, why am I here? Why am I doing this? Why am I part of this group? Why do I feel like we're all followers of Vaas or something?
But, you know, never felt like I was the leader of the group.
I know, but there was moments.
I feel like Vaas is probably asking similar questions. Like, why am I here?
Yeah.
Why am I part of this group?
Yeah. So V had a lot of moments earlier on in the campaign where she contemplated leaving because she was like, I didn't sign up to overthrow some crazy conspiracy going on in the city. And this is before it came to light that her dad was involved. But Voss was very gung-ho on like, we gotta cleanse the evil of the city, very Batman. And Vee was like, I just want to have a good time, and every day I'm almost dying, which like can be fun sometimes, but also not great other times when it involves like really traumatic shit.
Yeah.
And
that's a lot for Vee, who's a 20-year-old, to be going through.
Yeah, and that's part of why she had such a struggle with her relationship with Voss early on, was because she's like, who died and made you, boss? Like, everyone does what you say. Like, you suggest something and we fucking do it for some reason. And she was really frustrated with that for a while, because she's just like,
I can
why?
tell you why, because I was the only one suggesting things.
Yeah,
like most of the time in reality.
Yeah.
Like, does anyone have a plan of action? It's like, I got an idea. It's like, all right, we'll go with that. I'm like, cool. All right.
I mean, out of play, it makes
Voss
sense.
was the action man.
No, out
Voss
of
was
play,
the boss.
it makes sense. Like, as a player, I totally get it. In game, Vee was like, well, why does no one else have anything else they want to do? Like, obviously she wasn't coming up with plans either. But she also, her idea of an adventure was go find the owner of a missing dog. And find the dog. Like, that whole little thing, she was like, I'm gonna find this dog, I'm excited about it. Like, she drove that.
You did find the dog.
We found the dog.
Found the dog.
Still traumatic, but you know what, at least it was a little bit more of a good time for her. But yeah, so when the storyline started being geared towards Vee's first thought is, Voss isn't gonna come. Like, she was like,
I wasn't going to come originally.
He's like, there's no way he's gonna come. Like, she really thought that you would be like, this is a waste of my time. And that's when she started to reconsider your relationship, was the fact that you did come. She was just sort of like, oh, maybe he like somehow does care. And there was like some wavering moments for Vee, at least, on the relationship between our characters. But
No, go ahead.
But obviously all that very quickly died when you said Voss said he was gonna kill her dad. But yeah.
So why did Voss go?
Voss went, one, he had business he wanted to resolve in Daggerford. And two, he was kind of hoping that Daggerford was going to turn out differently. And correct, Voss did not want to leave the city. And part of his reason for leaving now is like, particularly with this Elder Eye business, whatever it may be, Voss feels, I'm out of my league. I can't do this anymore. And I'm not going to be in a place where I'm just going to be like essentially on the side, so to speak. I'm going to be at a place where my talents can be used to their fullest. With here, he really didn't want to go, but it came down to the fact that I need to resolve this. Also, we need to strike a blow to Manchun, which is the primary reason why he went. He wanted to end whatever operation Ellerthak had there. He wanted to end the Harrow Dust, which was plaguing the city. He wanted to end all of that. Yeah, it's true. He was the least invested in Vee's journey, and that never really changed. But that's kind of why he went.
That leads me into one of the questions that was submitted on Discord. And this one's from Cheetah. He said, she said? I apologize, Cheetah. I don't remember your pronouns. So Cheetah said, I love to hate Voss. Are there times playing Voss that you, as Logan, love to hate Voss?
I'm not really sure how to answer that. Love to hate. I'll answer this, I guess, in a roundabout way. I made the characters specifically as someone who would make decisions that people watching would be uncomfortable with and hopefully understand. I think if you really look at Voss is not this, but if you look at history's greatest monsters, you really study them, you start to realize they were coming from a logical place. Like it wasn't just, I'm going to get up and stomp puppies today. It's like it wasn't an impulsive decision. It came from a lot of things that happened to them, things they believed genuinely. It's a weird thing to think about, but some of the worst dictators in history did it due to altruism or what they believed altruism to be. In Vaas's case, going back to what you were saying previously, Vaas is very independent and demands that level of independence from everyone. Like the one thing everybody talks about in terms of Vaas being objectively evil is what he did to Orso, which was he convinced Orso to kill someone when he didn't want to do it. To Vaas, like there is something in the Reforged Ring, and this was some lore I made up, called Forging the Iron, which is in the ring. You cannot be someone who hesitates in your decisions. You're not someone who can show mercy, and you're not someone who can essentially second guess yourself. You have to make the hard choice, and you have to make it now. And if you don't, you die. And that's the way it is. And unless you are forged in iron, you are not ready for that life. To him and Orso is like, this guy is too deep in to be anything but either an exile or a warrior, one way or the other. Not one who necessarily fights, but somebody who can make the kind of decisions that are necessary to move forward with. And I've never been a slaver. I've never been the leader of a gang. I've never slit someone's throat. I do know how to fight with a knife, though not as fantastically as Vaas does. But I always try to make sure the decisions come from a place of logic within the character. That they come from a place where I know exactly why he's doing what he's doing. And it makes sense for him to do these things. And also, this might sound a little selfish, not care if viewers find them distasteful. Because one of my favorite shows is Breaking Bad. Walt becomes progressively more distasteful as time goes on. The viewership goes up. So my thought on that is you have to keep I encourage people who play particularly Dungeons and Dragons to make characters and have them make decisions that you find uncomfortable and try to find a reason why. Katie knows this. As actors, part of our job is to empathize with all of the decisions a character is supposed to make. I get a lot of white supremacist roles. A ton, in fact. Too much, I think. But in any case, I can't go in thinking this guy, this is a horrible man. He's a horrible white supremacist. And I was like, is there anything that could happen that could lead me to the decisions this man is making? And the answer has to be yes, because I'm human. And the one thing I wanted to make sure in Vaas is that he's the most human of the group in terms of his humanity.
He's just a guy.
He is just a guy. And like, I didn't want to say this, like, I was the last one to design my character, and wanting him to stand out, I made him normal looking because everyone else stands out. So I just made him a guy, essentially.
Yeah.
Like no frills, not that tall. Like I think maybe the second or third tallest in the group. He's like 6. Kind of a lot of tall people in this group. Far too many.
Yeah, I was really surprised to learn just how tall Seisha was.
I didn't think she was that tall either.
Yeah, she's over 6 feet tall.
Yeah, she's like 6'4". But I always wanted to make sure he was the most human in his decision making. It was partly because he had to be. He was never going to have magic. He was never going to make deals with demons or devils because that's slavery to him. And he was never going to ask like the magical people for help. So he had to make things on his own terms. Yeah, that was super important. So it was always dealing with people with humanity, so to speak, for good or for evil, for weal or for woe. It's like, it's easy to play a villain and be like, I'm going to eat this puppy. It's like, why are you going to do that? It's like, because I'm evil. It's like, well, really think about that and ask yourself if like your evil wizard or whatever would do something like that? What is it within the context of their decision making that they're doing that leads to this? Like
good villains.
What's your motivation?
Yeah. What's your motivation?
What's your motivation?
Good villains believe what they're doing is right and just.
Yes.
Yes.
No one in history has ever thought themselves a villain.
I think that's always why Boss has actually always been my favorite character. Actually,
are you serious?
I'm not kidding.
Oh my god!
Oh man!
Oh my god!
It's because I grew
up
shenanigans. It's because I grew up reading Marvel comics, and they're very like gray area.
Like, that's very flattering, though. Thank you.
Thank you. A bad guy, and
I do appreciate that.
I really like. I mean, I too enjoy dark fantasy and all that stuff. Obviously, I picked a very different direction with my character.
And it's not a bad direction. It's just different.
Push yourself.
Yeah, well,
as an actress.
I think I was next to last making my character actually, because I originally wanted to play. I originally wanted Vee to be a bard.
Really?
Mm-hmm.
I did not know that.
I had never played a bard before, and I was used to magic as kind of my wheelhouse. And I know I after I was told immediately I couldn't do a bard, then I had to do some more thinking, and then I went, oh, barbarian. I think I would actually really enjoy playing something I've just straight up never done. I've never played a brute strength kind of a character ever. Mm-hmm. And so, but my initial thought was goofy ass bard, runs away from home, wants to be a pop star. Like, was kind of the idea.
I kind of regret not meeting that person now.
Yeah.
It's a future campaign.
I kind of regret that.
And her thing was that she was going to campaign herself and get her name out there and try to get like a manager and like
Voss would have auditioned for your manager and your fame and success in order to propel us to this. I already see that's exactly what would happen.
And and the idea is that she wanted to be seen everywhere she went. She wanted to be recognized, like that whole this crazy girl like chasing fame. Essentially,
that would have been fun.
Was
somewhere in the multiverse. There's
somewhere in the multiverse.
There's Vee and Vaas the bar.
I got the inspiration for that character from a character Sammy played, which was an ex pop star that was kicked out of an already existing group because she can't sing. So every time she like that particular character.
That's great.
I love that character that Sammy played. That character was named Vanilla, and she was kicked out of the Spice Girls, and they're all named like Cinnamon and Nutmeg and whatever. And she played tambourine, but she insisted that she was still famous and stuff like that, and like insisted on trying to do it. So I was really inspired by that. And I talked to Sammy beforehand. I was like, here's what's up. Can I do something similar, but not quite?
Yeah.
But I was immediately told no because Ethan was a bard. So I was like, okay, Ethan's a bard. I want to be a duo with Ethan. I know him in real life, and I feel like we vibe really well as friends. So I picked something to play like opposite to that, essentially. So I thought barbarian was a good fit. I wanted to not look anything like myself in real life. I specifically built a character that I was like, doesn't look like me. And
I think the first piece of character art does a good job of portraying who you are, like as a character.
Thank you. I was like very specific for how I wanted her to look. I actually want her hair to be even curlier and more wild, but that's neither here nor there. Oh my gosh, I got lost in my answer. I'm so sorry.
No, it's all good.
But, we're jumping back and forth here.
But yeah, when it came to the character creation, I guess I never really said I originally wanted to be a bard. I'm trying to remember what the initial question was. I'm sorry.
I was originally going to be a cat man. Like he was adventure cat. He was a taxi guy who just wanted to go on adventures. I'm serious. Like that was originally like I just want to cat. I'm a cat man who wants to go on adventures. I'm adventure cat.
I remember
Oh,
now.
that makes the Catman of Daggerford even better.
Yeah.
I was explaining my boss is my favorite character. But yeah, it was the idea of the gray area. I picked someone who's not a gray area, but yes, sorry to circle back around to that.
It's okay.
I like that I like the intensity of Vaas, but it did always feel a little funny that everyone over here is like, la la la, let's just hang out, have a good fun time. And then Vaas is just like, I'm here to destroy an empire.
Let's get Vaas is here to get shit done.
With like the darkest background of any character I've played alongside role-playing.
So we're close to time.
I'm sorry, I keep talking.
Reel us in a little bit.
Okay.
Obviously, Vaas makes the announcement he's going to leave. Do you two see Vaas at this point in his journey as a villain?
I wish, and I'll tell you what I mean by that. I'll go ahead and say I don't see Vaas coming back in the campaign. I don't see that happening. I think what happened was essentially a settlement, and I think it's just a break off from there, and you may never see him again. I think everything that, like, there was still stuff I wanted to do, but it wasn't stuff involving the party. And that was the main thing, is like Katie just mentioned, is like the whole party has this kind of vibe and this essence going on over here, and I'm over here. And it's like, that was always the contentious issue. And I could never really convince anybody to kind of move in this direction. That's part of the reason why Vaas never felt like he was the leader of anything, more of the man on the side. I don't see him coming up. Like, for him to be a villain, like full-blown villain at this point, I mean, the full scope of the plan of that I had would have to come to fruition. And that's not in my hands, that's in the DM's hands. So when I say I wish, it would be like, I think it'd be really cool, but it's not my story. It's Dustin and Devin's.
I would say
your thoughts?
For Vee, her main thought process right now with Vaas leaving is she's just like, she's not even thinking about him on a personal level at all anymore. She's just like, he's trying to get to him first. And I think this is actually going to cause a shift in role play for Vee, honestly, with this thought in the back of her head that like she's going to show up too late, that somehow you're going to get there first, and that Vaas is going to get there first, and that like it's really important that she gets to Ellerthak like as soon as possible and makes a decision whether it's kill him, whatever. And so I know that like her motivation right now is like heavily based around what she anticipates his Vaas's master plan might be.
It was like I had the whole thing actually out of what I was going to do.
It seemed like it.
I did, because things were starting to come together. And that wasn't my original purpose for creating the character. But as we kept moving in with crime syndicates, as we kept engaging in a city, like you said, Ross, Vaas, the guy who takes action. He's not a guy who waits and sees for everything. Like Harold said, if I had control of the ship, I would have just put it in park. And in Vaas's mind, indecision is worse almost always than action. Because you're essentially leaving the tides of fate up to somebody else. And the Xanathar is moving. Manchun, even as he's licking his wounds, is going to move. They're all moving. And if we don't move to counter them, they'll win. And that's always been his argument.
Everyone's playing chess on some level in Waterdeep.
In the note that Ellerthak wrote, he mentions that Xanathar seems to be moving nobles into positions to be new masked lords. And Vaas's thought is just like, this is what happens when we don't manipulate the system. Like someone else does it. And they're better than us at it.
Well, it'll be interesting to see if Vaas comes back around.
Are you coming back around?
Yeah, that is the question. Nixling Willow Song put and asked like, are you leaving the show for good? Are you sticking around the cast? Do you even know at this point?
I don't know at this point. It depends. Like it was a tough decision in actuality, and one I've been grappling with essentially since the first year of the campaign. Because as Katie mentioned, as you mentioned, there's never been like a point where Voss like clicked in with the group. And even though I really liked what I was doing and I really liked playing him as a character, it's just playing tug of war with the story at the end of the day. And eventually the dissonance is going to come to a head. It was part of the reason why it's like I didn't have to go see Uthal when Harold was there. I could have metagamed that, but it's more interesting. It's more interesting if I go and he sees exactly what I'm doing and he sees that I've been copying him in order to learn how to be more persuasive. But it was also at that point where it's like, okay, I can't have you undermining me constantly. And I can't have the group undermining me constantly either. And it was a matter of like, even Harold says, like, you care more about your plans than us. And he didn't say anything, but the answer is yes. Because like to Vaas, he feels like the group's going to be fine. City is what's in peril. He can't do anything about Harold and his familiar. Can't do anything about Finley and her apparent devil lust. Can't do anything about Seisha and her demons. He can't do anything about it. Despite what Seisha says, it's like there's nothing I can do about that. Like you say, I'm here as a force of like support. I'm not really. I'm a force of division. I have been since I came in. And it's like, I don't know whether or not I'll come back. We'll see. Like we're in a process of discussing that. But if I don't, it's been a fine ride at the end of the day. And I'm glad I got to play what part of this character I could. But it'll always be bittersweet because there was more I wanted to do with him. But in order for me to do that, I mean, I'd have to take control of the campaign. And at the end of the day, it is not my story to tell. I am a player in a campaign, not the DM of a campaign.
Yeah, D&D is a collaborative story.
It is.
Nature. And that's one of the beautiful things about it has been watching you all tell that story together up until this point. So definitely going to be sad to see you leave, even if only temporarily. And
Theret Kang could totally just be.
Here's the thing about Theret Kang is like he's the diametric opposite of Voss in that Theret Kang doesn't have any plans. It's not that he doesn't have ill will. Like he's a man who is like a rat, so he is rat-like desires, but also like he barely knows where he is. He can't plan shit. He's a character who leans heavily into comic relief, and
he's
like
fun.
I don't mind playing a guy like that, but it's also a matter of like you got to see how the party dynamic is going to shift too. Like Katie said it herself, it's like she's got to start thinking about things because the situation has changed, and we need to see how all of this shakes out before any moves are made.
Yeah. Well, we're a little over time at this point. Thank you, folks, for sticking with us, as this was a jam-packed episode of not only episode 131, but getting a little bit more of a glimpse into both characters from this past year and the various journeys they've been on. So thank you, audience, for staying with us. Thank you, Katie. Thank you, Logan, for being with me tonight and taking the time to talk about your characters. Any last parting words from you all?
I do want to say, I just want to say to Logan, since he's leaving the group, that in all honesty, you are by far one of the best role players I have ever had the pleasure of playing with. And it's always so much fun. You always do such a great job with every single character you've ever played, whether it was comic relief or anything serious or whatever. I know all the one shots is mainly comic relief. But they are still super fun.
Thank you. One shots are best time to test, and thank you for that compliment. That's very flattering. I appreciate that a lot. Parting words from me. To anyone listening to this, to me, D&D has always been a great medium for creating situations and ideas that make you uncomfortable, that are worth exploring, because there's no consequences at the end of the day. Like, it may not feel that way, and I think Katie can attest, as actors, we don't feel nothing. It's hard to just turn off the stream of emotions. I've seen her cry enough times on the stream to know that that's not the case. But at the end of the day, it's consequences free. So I think this medium is a great place to explore situations and ideas and concepts. Like, I don't feel like the surface of it's really been scratched yet. And I think can be a great medium for you to explore aspects of yourself you may not be comfortable with. Because at the end of the day, you can walk away from the table without any scars or, slit throats or anything like that. And it helps you discover aspects of yourself you may not have quite realized yet. Like, I think it's a wonderful medium in that sense. And I hope to encourage people to explore those darker aspects that they may not be comfortable with, because it's still a part of humanity.
Yeah, and you can learn a lot about yourself through role play.
So. You can, absolutely.
Well, thank you both again for joining me this evening. And thank you all for watching. Sunday is coming, and we'll see you then. Have a good night.